thing about pilots is, what will frustrate the hell out of me, we would get to, say, Germany or England or wherever, and we've got like a layover or whatever, and we go to the bar and we have some drinks or we have dinner, and they all sit and talk about flying. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about flying. I want to talk about, like, what movie was out, what TV show, what stuff in the news. Like, I want to talk about it. Like, why are you guys not into this stuff? And they're just, well, you know, if you shoot the ILS going into that field, I mean, you're going to end up on a bad day. I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation right now. So yeah, I knew
you were not like the others.
I knew right away. And all they thought about was prolonging their careers. You know, what job do I need to have? What job do I need to get to be near the wing commander? So he recommends me for this assignment.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I don't want to do all that.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by Deborah Owen of the CPA and business management firm Owen & DeSalvo. I've worked with Deborah for years, and not only is she brilliant, but she is a rock-solid, amazing human. If you need CPA or business management help, especially for entertainment, call Owen & DeSalvo. For this episode, I got to speak with Lynelle White. You are in for a treat. Lynelle is a writer. She wrote on Army Wives, and she is currently in the Film Independent Episodic Writers Lab. They chose 6 people, and she is one of them. Prior to that, she was a pilot in the Air Force. She has a lot to say about a lot of things, and I felt very lucky to have this conversation with her. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And I'm doing a big push right now for website subscribers, so please go to the website and sign up if you haven't already. I promise I don't inundate you with emails, but I do send some to let you know what's coming up, and there are some exciting things coming up in the next couple of months that you don't want to miss. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbay, and now on Spotify and iHeartRadio. Okay, here's Lynelle.
What do you do?
So I am a television writer. I also direct short films when I get the money and or the time. I'm also former Air Force pilot, but we can get into all that later.
We're getting into all of that. Okay, when you were a kid, let's go all the way back, because you have like the most coveted job in television right now. So what did you think you were going to do when you were a kid?
Oh, I was going to be an astronaut.
Oh, for sure.
Or some variants of that. The person I wanted to be was Han Solo. That's who I saw on. I saw Han Solo as a kid, and I said, "Wow, this guy is cool. He's hanging out in the Mos Eisley Cantina with his feet up, just sort of kicking back. He shoots a guy, and then he just sort of walks out of the bar with no repercussions, flips a coin to the bartender, and is like, sorry about the mess. And then he's just gonna go get in his craft, his spacecraft, and fly off with his furry friend. I was like, how do I do this profession?
How do I get that
That's
job?
a thing, right?
That's
and
a good
my mom is like, no, that's not a thing. You can't be a space pirate. But we don't have the
maybe not yet.
We don't have technology, and we don't live in that world yet. But she told me, she's like, well, think about maybe the stuff you're into, with space and technology and science. She's like, well, maybe you think about the Air Force. Maybe that might be an option for you as you get older. And so that stayed in my head. So
I love that. So no one said you can't do that, you're a girl.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, I mean, my intentions initially were pretty small. I mean, I just wanted to get an engineering degree. That was my first thing. I was like, let me get an engineering degree, and I'll probably go work for like Space Command or NASA and sit in my cubicle. And that's what my undergrad is totally in, making programs to track satellites where they are 5 days from now in their orbit or whatever.
Cool.
That's what I did.
And you were thinking, and that's enough.
And I was like, yeah, okay,
I'll be in the room.
This is what I'll do. That'll be cool. Like, I'll be in that space realm, and I'll be happy and fine. But when I went to the Air Force Academy, and when I was there, the needs of the Air Force sometimes outweigh the needs of the individual.
Yes.
Which is how the military works at times. There's manning shortfalls, and they have to fill them. So
when you go to the Air Force Academy, then do you have a commitment afterwards?
Yes, depending on what you do. Like, if I had done engineering, my commitment would have been probably about 5-6 years, either working in a missile silo somewhere or working at Space Command or whatever job they chose to give me. But if you chose to be a pilot or a navigator after you graduate, well, that commitment's longer because they spend a lot more money training you. So that's 8 years.
It's a big investment.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money training you.
Yeah.
So they want to sort of recoup some of that. So when I was there, they were short on pilots. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah.
The reluctant Air Force pilot.
Cool. And all my friends are going to pilot training. And the other thing, I'll never forget this. My senior year, we had the Commandant Cadets, who's like a 2-star general, I think. 1 or 2-star general. His name was Lorenz. And I use that name in scripts a lot now. So he had put out this edict of, if you are physically qualified and you've passed the trainer, meaning we had a little trainer that we had to fly just to make sure that you can move your hands and your hands and eyes sort of work together. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you've passed the screening program and you're medically qualified, you're going to pilot training. If you don't want to go, you need to come to my office and talk to me about it. And so that was kind of in that realm. I was on the fence. I was like, I don't know if this, if I want to do the flying thing.
No, you have to.
I'm kind of like a nerdy engineer, and I was like, well, I have 2 tests this week, a paper, a fitness test. I got to do my room for the inspection on Saturday. Because, it's a military school.
Yeah.
I don't have time to go talk to a general about this. So I'll just go.
You didn't have time to opt out.
Yeah, I didn't have time. And then I knew how that conversation was going to go with me, Cadet White, going into General's office saying, I don't want to go to pilot training, That was a one-sided conversation. But, no regrets whatsoever. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, my God, I was forced to fly an airplane. That wasn't the case at all. Yeah, I was encouraged, highly encouraged, which was fine. It worked out great for me.
Now, how many women were in your program?
At the Air Force Academy?
Yeah.
Or that's hard to say. So it's a small school. For an undergrad school, we have about 4,000 cadets at any time. And we do it like, same thing as you would do at college. We've got a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior class. We call them by different names. But, you got 4 years there, about 4,000 kids. I'd say we hovered around 10% when I was there, 10, 15%.
What was that experience like? Were you like a unicorn in the Air Force Academy?
There weren't a lot of black females. We were definitely the smallest of the smallest group. It is definitely a boys' club, a boys' environment. Everything is very geared hierarchical in how the male brain operates. And I didn't mind it. And there's a lot of order and structure. Some people don't like that. My day wasn't entirely my own all the time. And we had set things we had to do. You get up in the morning and it's like, and of course you're wearing a uniform. So imagine like being a college kid, but you got to get up in the morning and your uniform's got to be ironed perfectly. And you need to go out to morning formation, you stand there, and then you guys march to breakfast. You eat breakfast together, and then you go to class.
It's like the antithesis of what college is.
Yeah, you can't, I never missed a single class.
Yeah, there's no sleeping in.
No, never. And this was all like 7 a.m., 7:30.
Dang.
I think, maybe even earlier, I can't remember.
So you guys, I imagine, were also not drinking all night.
No, here's the other thing. As a freshman or a sophomore, I didn't even have a car. You weren't allowed to have a car. So I wasn't getting off campus to go drinking anywhere. The seniors sometimes would. And then by your senior year, once you're in the leadership positions, you see the dynamic change because then it's like they'll let their buddies sleep in or whatever, because they are now in charge of the squadron. That's how it works. As you work your way up from freshman to senior year, they're the squadron leaders and we're like the underlings. And then you sort of work your way up. Yeah.
Now, was it hostile?
Yeah. Hostile in terms of being a woman and...
Was it tough?
Yeah, of course. Anytime where you're, one of, the unicorn, as you mentioned, yeah, it is hard. But I think it's hard for everybody there. Mm-hmm. I had a classmate of mine commit suicide, and he was successful. There were a lot of instances. Now, were there things where women were harassed and targeted and someone broke in a room and stole underwear? Sure, we had that stuff. I gotta be totally honest and like in the academic environment, it didn't matter. Like whoever, when you're doing exams and stuff, that's one thing. I definitely feel like the issue I had was when you're the minority and also a female, whatever you do ends up talked about way more than what Bobby does. Bobby, it's not interesting what Bobby, Bobby did that, and no one really talks about it. But if you had, I saw her and she, doing this with so-and-so, and it becomes like this whole gossip chain. So why? Because I've had that my whole career where it's like whatever I'm doing gets discussed a lot more than, say, what white guy Bobby is doing. I don't know.
So you have to be very well behaved.
You really have to be 2 or 3 times as good just to be on the same level.
Yeah.
It's a good primer for Hollywood, actually. I tell people, it's like the military is like, yeah. Difference being, though, a big difference in the military being is that the pay between men and women is the same. You don't get that in Hollywood here.
Oh, because it's a government scale?
Well, yeah, it's based on your rank. So if, as a captain in the Air Force, I make the same amount of money as my male peers made. It's not different. No one can just automatically give me 70 cents on a dollar. It doesn't happen.
Right, good.
So that's the difference there.
Okay, so then you graduate. Did you become a pilot after you graduated?
Yeah, so after you graduate, I had a year of pilot training. And then from there, they sort of decide based on where you rank in your pilot training class and what your desires are. They assign you to, your weapon system. And for me, it was I ended up in the air refueler, so a KC-135. It was a Boeing 707, if you can picture it. So 4 engines. John Travolta has the same plane, only he uses his for like fun and games. And we kind of gut the thing and we fill it with gasoline because we want to do, or instead of having people land to refuel, that slows down the ops tempo. We want to keep you in air. So
you're fueling people
in
up
air.
in the sky.
Yeah. There's a little stick that comes out the back. It's called the boom, and we do it in air.
That's amazing.
We got it down to a science, though. I mean, we've been doing it since the 50s.
Right, but you haven't been doing it since the 50s.
Right. But again, it's like anything. You learn from day one. Like on day one, I didn't get in the cockpit of a KC-135 and know what every switch and button does. It's impossible. But over time, and you sit in the simulator and you sit in classrooms and you just build up to know. And it's just practice. And then, again, we talked before we started recording, we talked about mentors. So in the flying world, you always have a mentor sitting next to you. I started out as a co-pilot, which meant I was in the right seat. I had someone more experienced in the left seat to sort of like, oh, no, this is how you do it. This is what you want to do. Think about this, to sort of bring you along. So in that aspect, flying world's really good with the master-apprentice type relationship. We just have it built in.
It's always a teaching hospital.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have maybe a third or fourth crew member who, for us, in the case of the tanker, was the boom operator. So the enlisted person who goes in the back, who actually does the air fueling, because I'm up front flying.
Yeah.
I've been back there a bunch, and it just, for me, as a pilot, I was never comfortable with like, oh, another airplane coming this close. You do you. I'll be up front.
How far away are they?
It's just a matter of feet, really. There's obviously a window that the other aircraft can be in. They go too far right, too far left, up, down. There's a little like magical envelope that they can stay in and stay on the boom and not fall off. And then I've got to sort of keep my aircraft level because they're basically following whatever I'm doing. Yeah. It's like monkey see, monkey do. But no, it's not hard.
I know you make it sound like it's nothing, but I'm like, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the things we do. I mean, I don't even know how to really explain it in terms of like, is it complicated? Yeah, everything's complicated. I mean, writing a script is complicated.
But it can be done.
Yeah, and you just have to take the time to break it down to the small pieces, and then it becomes the whole.
So for how long? So 8 years?
So I did that. I flew that jet for 4 years, and then I got a great assignment of flying these cute little Lear jets. I fly the generals around to their meetings. And so I did that for another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that doesn't sound bad.
That was a good job, but then the dynamic is different, right? So now I'm more like a commercial airline pilot. I'm picking someone up, I'm dropping them off, and there's time. And
you're flying private jets.
Exactly, and I've got to get their bags on, and he's brought his golf clubs, and that doesn't fit, and then whatever. And the issue really it wasn't the generals or the admirals. They were kind of mellow, like, okay, just get me there whenever you get me there. It was their aides. Their aides were always like, what time are we leaving? And he needs this, and we need to, constantly like in my business, like, look, dude, I'm going to do the job, and I can't control the weather. So if he can't get into freaking DC because it's fogged over, that's not,
yeah.
Where else do you guys want to go? What's going to make you happy? Nothing. Well, okay, then my job is to fly this jet.
So were you ever in combat?
Yeah, I mean, when I was flying tankers, that was, after 9/11, that's all we did.
Where were you?
With the tanker is a little bit different because it's considered a high value asset, meaning you don't want to put it on a runway, say in Iraq, because someone lobs a freaking missile and then you've lost this
$1 billion airplane.
Yeah, you've lost this airplane, which is key to you. Remember, I talked about the continuous operations, which is key to you being able to implement the war for the day. So we would kind of station ourselves close to Iraq, so say like Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Turkey, and then fly close to the border, sometimes inside the border if you got a little turned around, lost. I'm not going to mention any names. And then refuel the combat fighters as they come out. It would hit their targets, come out, refuel, go back in, so that they're able to continuously operate instead of like driving all the way back to home base, landing. It wastes a lot of time, and it's just less effective.
Wow. Okay, so so at some point you were done, you got out, you transitioned?
So flying was great, and I don't think there's a better job to have in your 20s because the responsibility part. I was 24, maybe 20.
So you were grown
25.
up long before the rest of us were.
Oh, you had to. That's the other thing about the military is like there's no time for you to be like I watch these shows, like I watch Broad City sometimes, and they're in their 20s, and I'm trying to figure stuff out. Really, I didn't have that, and there's a little twinge of regret for me because I'm like, I didn't spend my 20s figuring stuff out. I had to have my shit together, So, at like 24, 25, I was already, by then I'd moved over to the left seat and I was aircraft commander. So like I'm in charge. So I gotta make sure the mission gets done, all my people on board are safe. I'm also inherently responsible for whoever we're refueling because they're kind of relying on me. I'm their lead and they're just following me. So
man, that's a lot on a 24-year-old.
Yeah, but I didn't feel like I never woke up in the morning like, oh my God, this is so much, I can't handle it. I was like, okay, I'm ready. Yeah. Like, let's do this. In fact, I got antsy those years I spent in the right seat. I was like, after about a year and a half, I was like, all right, I'm ready to run the show. Like, I'm ready to do this. So it's kind of like you're a CEO of a small company, or I call it the CEO of a flying circus. And then as you move on in your career, you get more responsibilities, and it just doesn't feel like, oh my God, I'm only 20 and I'm doing all, like, you're just like, this is what
You can't just be impressed
with
yourself. Matter of fact,
you get so caught up in that space. Here I am, 24, 25, and I'm like looking at the other guys in the squadron saying, why does he get to go on that trip? Why is he getting upgraded to instructor? Like, we were competitive amongst each other.
Sure.
We weren't thinking, wow, we're doing so much in our 20s. We were just like, no, I want to be that guy's getting something I'm not getting it. That sort of stuff. Like the backstabbing competitive stuff you get in any sort of job environment.
And they say, the pilots are the most competitive.
Well, majority of us are super type A, we were the kids that like, I was competing with kids in high school in terms of who got the 100 on the test. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't me, I want to know who. Okay, I'm going to take you down next time. It was that. And my mom always wonders, like, why are you this way? Because your dad and I are not this way, but you're super competitive about everything. It's like, I don't know. That's just the way I came out.
So you knew you could, especially after this, you knew you could do anything.
I don't know about all that. I just knew that I wanted to do something that really fulfilled me creatively. Because the one thing about flying is, it's an occupation where you kind of do the same thing every time, unless there's weather or some sort of emergency.
Can't be creative.
You can't really, there's not a whole lot of room like, you know what, I want to go left instead of right. Oh, I'm going to hit the mountain if you go right.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So I just felt like there was something sort of inside of me where I said, this isn't quite doing it for me. I mean, this is fine.
This isn't everything.
I could spend the rest of my life doing this, but I feel like there's more. Well, what is it that I'm into? And what's the thing that I talk about outside of work? Because the thing about pilots is, what will frustrate the hell out of me, we would get to, say, Germany or England or wherever, and we've got like a layover or whatever, and we go to the bar and we have some drinks or we have dinner, and they all sit and talk about flying. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about flying. I want to talk about, like, what movie was out, what TV show, what stuff in the news. Like, I want to talk about, like, why are you guys into this stuff? And they're just, well, if you shoot the ILS going into that field, I mean, you're going to end up on a bad day. I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation right now. So I knew
you were not like the others.
I knew right away. And all they thought about was prolonging their careers. What job do I need to have? What job do I need to get to be near the wing commander? So he recommends me for this assignment.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I don't want to do all that.
And you know what? God bless those guys. We need them.
Yeah, for sure. But I knew, I was like, look, I'm going to go fly the Learjets for a while, which is the thing I did with the generals. And then it's going to be time for me to move on because I want to talk about Brokeback Mountain. And none of you guys are talking about this movie. And I mean, there were some movies we talked about, like Star Wars was canon. But yeah, I just knew, like, I need to find another tribe. Mm-hmm. You guys have been my tribe for a while in my formative years, but I'm going to move on to another tribe and see what happens. So
how'd you do that?
So I was living in St. Louis because that's where my last assignment was. Which, I hope people take encouragement if they hear this. No matter where you are, you can make something. So I decided I'm going to transition into the reserves, which meant the 2 weeks a year, one weekend here and there, and
weekend warrior.
Yeah, and it also meant I decided personally, I was like, I'm going to get out of the cockpit because I can't. If I'm really going to make this transition, I can't be on, a 2-week trip to freaking Djibouti that ends up being 3 weeks because the jet broke and we don't have a replacement. Like, these are the things that happen when you get out in the system. And I was like, I really can't do that. So you can just put me behind a desk. And that's the other thing they tend to do anyway as you get older. Military, again, being a lot like Hollywood. Once you're over 30, you're kind of like, okay, you're old.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, because by then you're starting to hit major and you're starting to be in the more decision-making roles. It's like, okay, let's get you out of the cockpit. And now you're going to like direct and make decisions. That's where a lot of guys tend to go crazy, where they're like, I want to fly. And now your rank is saying, no, you need to be home making decisions, setting policy, writing the evaluations. No more of that, or less of that. And they go nuts, and they're like,
go have a family, calm down.
Right, and go lead. Now, instead of just, being in a cockpit and managing the couple people.
Your strategy now.
I need you to manage 100 people or 1,000 people or even a whole wing, which is, a couple thousand people. So it's just that, and that's where a lot of people get a little bit like, I'm not flying anymore. I'm going crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm fine with it because that gives me time to like explore, because I spent all my 20s kind of on the road, living out of a suitcase, whatever. Mm-hmm. What are my hobbies? What are my interests? Who am I?
Yeah.
So again, back to the broad city of it all. Those girls will know, like they'll figure it out, because they're off, doing their thing. And I didn't have that time, so I had to do that in my 30s and say, okay, what is it I want to be? So then I'm in St. Louis, and I find that there's a local filmmaking community. Is it huge? No, but are they trying to do what they can? And this is the time where resources are now more available. So everyone is starting to edit it on their Mac computer. Everyone is starting to shoot with, say, if not their phone, then they'll get a DSLR and shoot something, or they rent a Red. So people are trying to make things. People are trying to make things. So I was like, wow, that sounds like something I would be interested in, because I've always loved cinema and always loved TV and that whole world, but I've never had time for it. So I got into it by just going to a film festival in St. Louis, where they showed a bunch of short films. I was like, I just want to go and see what people are making.
Yeah.
And I found that people could put the camera and in the right spot and shoot a scene and light it and have some decent audio. Fine. But where they were lacking was the script, was the story itself. I was like, you have a sketch. You don't have a story. You don't have a beginning, middle, and end. You don't have anything that's really pulling me through. It's not a compelling anything.
And
really.
You recognized that you knew story.
I didn't think I knew story at all, but I knew, okay, that's not working, and here's why.
You knew something was missing.
Yeah, I knew something was missing. So I was like, okay, let me first, I've had this ambition of being a director, because I felt like a director would be a natural step for me, because it's like, okay, I know how to manage people. I can tell people what to do. I
can be the boss.
Yeah, if I have an army of like a bunch of crew members and they happen to be male, that's a space I'm very comfortable in. That's not new for me. So I felt like directing was a natural shift. Another thing, when you're flying, of course you have a windshield, right? Mm-hmm. And the world has to look a certain way through that windshield. And I just make it look, okay, the house needs to be here, the runway needs to be here. I make it look a certain way.
Oh, interesting.
Well, that's the same thing as framing a shot, right? Mm-hmm. And so people always ask me, wow, it's such a big leap to go from flying to being like working in film and TV. I was like, man, actually, really, it's not, because I'm a visual person anyway. Everything about flying majority of it is pretty visual.
Yeah.
So I felt like it transferred well, but, we'll see. So where was I?
So you're at the film festival, you saw a bunch of shorts.
So then I said, okay, I need to go and work on screenwriting. So I just went to a community college that had a screenwriting class. I just started teaching film, TV, in the St. Louis area. And I just started writing like short little scripts. And they're terrible, and then you just write some more. Then I went out and shot one, and I learned from shooting it. From there, and I kept doing that for a couple years while I was, being a reservist and sort of working at like a normal civilian job. And then a few years back, I went to a filmmaking seminar just for women in St. Louis. This lovely man, Ken Lezebnik, I owe him my career. Ken Lezebnik, who's from Missouri. So he comes back to the St. Louis area and he says, I want to put on like a 2-week filmmaking workshop just for women. And I heard about it and I'm like, sign me up, I'm in.
Why did he want to do that?
Ken is one of the good guys. Ken teaches at a school called Stevens College. It's predominantly a women's school tucked in the middle of Missouri, Columbia, Missouri. And he just gets it. I mean, I've never really sat down and asked Ken, like, why just for women? Yeah. But I think he just saw that there's a gap here.
We need some women's voices.
Yeah. And he has a wife who's an actress, and maybe this is part of it. The parts she's getting offered maybe are not to her liking, and they're not varied and not complicated, or not complex, I should say. So maybe that's part of it. But he did it, and I jumped on board. And he had this pilot that he had written, and basically we served as his crew to shoot it over a 2-week period. So, and he brought in some friends of his from Hollywood. We're there in Columbia, Missouri, and we shot it. And it turned out okay. I finally saw the final cut about a year later. It turned out fine for a bunch of amateurs who didn't know what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And so Ken is a TV writer. And so he'd written for shows like Star Trek Enterprise. He wrote for Touched by an Angel for years. And so Ken, I stayed in contact with him after the program because he's just like, well, you can do this. You have certain skills that can transfer into this industry. At least of which is like you show up on time when we're going to do this stuff. I was like, that's half the battle right there.
Showing up is half the job.
So Ken had worked on Army Wives season 6, and so a few years back he contacts me. I'm still in St. Louis doing my thing. I was then debating film school. I was like, maybe I need to do a formal education or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. And Ken contacts me and he says, send me some of your writing samples. Army Wives lost a writer. It's a female. They want to replace with a female. The fact that you're a veteran, even better. I can send it to the showrunner and see what he thinks. I was like, showrunner, executive producer in Hollywood, gonna read my stuff that I wrote in St. Louis? Come on, man. All right, fine, here, Ken, whatever. And so I send it to Ken. He forwards it to Jeff Melvoin, and Jeff calls me on the phone and says, "Can you come out here and meet with me? I want to talk about your material." I was like, okay, yeah, fine. I had some frequent flyer miles. I used them. I stayed with a friend, and I came out here and I met with Jeff, delightful man. And what fascinated me about him was my first Hollywood meeting ever. Fascinated me about him is he wanted to know so many details about my flying career and what it was like. And then he was just like, okay, tell me about this. Tell me about pilot training. How does that work? And any phrases I would use that were like military jargon, he was like, what's that? He wanted to know. He was genuinely not just curious, but
interested.
Yeah. It wasn't just you're a novelty and I'm going to use this to make my show.
He's making a show and wants it to be as authentic as possible.
Right. So I met with him and then he said, you know what? I really would like to have your voice in the room. So he hired me. That's a random Cinderella. I call it the Cinderella story of TV writing. Because there's a couple of happy accidents that have to happen in order for that to work out. First of all, I have to connect with Ken Lezebnik in some capacity, and he's hanging out he happened to be hanging out in Columbia, Missouri, doing a filmmaking workshop for women. Then it's on me to make a decent impression enough with Ken that he's recommending me for something, another opportunity. And then I had to have samples ready to send, and it didn't matter because I had never really written a TV script. I just written here are my short films that I wrote that I'm gonna direct, but send them okay, whatever.
But you were ready. You had something.
I had something. And also there's also that intangible factor of life experience that this particular showrunner was looking for, because the writer's room ends up being more I always think of it like a batting lineup for, say, the New York Yankees. I'm not going to have 9 A-Rods, okay? But you need a guy that can steal bases. You need a guy that can, lead off and maybe get a single, a double. And then you have an A-Rod come up. And you have your pitcher. You have guys with different skill sets. And that's what you need to build your room.
Ideally.
To do, right?
Yeah.
And I say guys, I mean that in the most generic sense in terms of men, women, whatever. And so Jeff hired me, and I worked on the last season of that show. And it was great because my learning curve went steep. Because opposed to the years I spent kind of figuring out my own self-teaching, St. Louis seminar here or there, I had 6 months being on a show in a room every day. And the way he breaks story, I adopted. That's how I still break story. His whole process and how he does it. We do the beats, and then we do index cards, and then we do outline. And we're really hard about the outline. The outline is everything. If you do anything, rewrite the outline to death, and then the script will come. I still do that. And then to get to go on set when your episode is shot, that was also learned a lot. So in 6 months, I felt like, oh my God, I got sort of a film school education.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had to go to film school after that?
I did, actually. I ended up going to UCLA. So after Army Wives, we got canceled, and it wasn't because our material wasn't good. It was because financial reasons, I think, on the part of the network. We were starting to get, once you get into season 8 of a show, it's going to be super expensive.
Yeah.
So after that, I worked on this very different, in terms of tone, in terms of budget, show on Sci-Fi Network called Z Nation. It's like a zombie apocalypse show. We used to call it the zombie road trip show because really they were traveling throughout America and encountering different zombies in different capacities depending on where you were.
Now, did you get an agent from that first job?
You know what? Agents didn't come calling me at all after Army Wives. I ended up cold calling a bunch of people, and I did have an agent, but I've learned a valuable lesson from that, in that don't sign with the first person that kind of comes along. And then also it helps to have an agent who's at a larger firm. We used to have this idea of the boutique agents, boutique managers, and now I would steer clear of that because they just don't have the network to really They don't have their, I found that and this might be a specific case with her, she didn't kind of know what was going on.
Because the big agencies have access to
Yeah,
everything.
they have access, and they know what other clients are doing, and they know who's packaging what together, and what show is staffing. She never knew when shows were staffing. I was like, well, then how are you going to get me a job?
Then how's that helpful?
It's not at all. So after 2 years, I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to cut her loose.
Yeah.
Like, I was getting my own jobs because I ended up on Z Nation just because my own contacts. I was at the Writers Guild at a women's committee meeting. Long story short, I ended up sitting next to the wife of the showrunner. I didn't know she was the wife of the showrunner at the time until I got a phone call later, like, oh yeah, she recommended you. That sort of stuff happens. But then after Z Nation, again, I had no agent. The phone wasn't ringing, no meetings. I was like, okay, well, it's not them, it's me. So I need to work on my material. Let me work on my scripts. Then it's not there yet. So I decided to go to UCLA for the MFA in Screenwriting program. The other factor, full disclosure, was that I had the GI Bill, because I'd served so many years.
Oh, so you had the money to go.
So I had the money to go.
You might as well.
Right. So I was like, okay. And then here's the other thing, how the GI Bill works, or how it used to work. I think we're fighting with Congress to, change it. When I say we, I mean like veterans and veteran organizations. Actually, there is a time limit for me in terms of the GI Bill. So if I don't use it after a certain amount of years, Uncle Sam will take that money back, and they'll be happy to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, my money was hard earned. I'm going to go use it. And UCLA was good, too, because I made some more contacts there. Because to go back to the Cinderella story of it all, what's hard about my situation is I wasn't out here pounding the pavement for 5-6 years before I got that job on Army Wives, right?
You got invited.
Right, which means that I didn't have the network of like assistants or execs, or I didn't know as many people as someone who'd been out here, who had been, I was an assistant on this show, and then I met this exec, and then I was in this program, and then I met this person.
Right.
Their networks were a lot broader.
You didn't come up with a whole class of people.
Right. So I was like, well, at least going to UCLA, I'll not only have my classmates as peers coming up, but then also the instructors too, who you interact with, and they like your work. They might recommend you for something or refer you to someone or whatever.
People know people.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just another way to expand my network in terms of going there. And I came out of there in 2 years, not even 2 years. It starts in September and you end in June of like a year and a half later. Yeah. I mean, I came out of there with like 3 feature scripts, 2 pilot scripts, and a short film that I wrote and directed.
Nice.
So it's all I was doing, was just
and
making
an
content.
MFA?
Yes, and an MFA.
Yeah.
And Ava DuVernay, who comes to your commencement and gives a speech. Being in an alumni network, it's all super helpful. But again, I mean, if you don't have the money, I don't know if chalking up the money for MFA is everyone's cup of tea, because I don't like debt at all, and I don't take it on. I try to avoid it when possible. So if I was in a certain circumstance where I had the GI Bill to cover my expenses, so
Great.
That was my thing.
Yeah.
And then I graduated in June, and I got accepted into Film Independent's first ever Episodic lab. So Film Independent has seen the writing on the wall in terms of how hard it is to get features off the ground, particularly in the independent space. So they've now created a lab for television writers. And so I was in their first lab, and there were 6 of us. And we just finished that. That was all of October. And that was another great thing.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was another great situation for me in terms of, again, I got to meet 5 other writers, my peers, and we all would have drinks after the lab, because the lab sort of meets in the evenings, right? A couple times a week. And then we got to network, like Barbara Hall, who runs Madam Secretary, came in. Jason Weiner, who directed the Modern Family. Yeah, Modern Family pilot came in. And our mentors were Dawn and Nicole, we call them, but it's Dawn Prestwich and Nicole Yorkin. There's a show called Z, the Theory of Everything with Christina Ricci that was on Amazon. So they were our mentors, and they read all our scripts, and they gave notes. And then the biggest part of the lab, which I encourage everyone to do if you are a writer, director type, is we worked on our pitch documents. And
smart.
Yeah, because the culmination of the lab was pitching our projects to Netflix. So we went over to pitch to Peter Friedlander, the VP of Original Series at Netflix. They really embraced their content because they put their shows everywhere in the building.
It's like projected on the walls.
Yes, projected on the walls, and there's a cafe on every floor, the Stranger Things Cafe.
Yeah,
we ended up meeting in a little conference room that we were in. It was called the BoJack Horseman conference room, so that was on the walls. I was like, they really are saying, this is our stuff, and we're proud of it. Yeah, we're all in. So the culmination of the lab was the pitch to Peter and like 5 other execs. That was something I'd never really, I pitched a little bit at UCLA because we have to pitch to get into classes, but to have a 5 to 7 minute document that we worked on and we but we practiced and then we revised and we tried it out. We tried it out on our mentors. We tried it out. Jason Weiner was one of the people we tried it out on. So having that 5 to 7 minute pitch document is helpful for a couple of things. So sometimes you're in these networking environments. I don't know if you've ever done sort of the speed dating with execs. Like the Writers Guild will sometimes have it where you got 10 minutes to sit down at this table, meet this exec, whatever. That's where your 5 to 7 minute pitch document is helpful because it does two things. I have enough in there in the beginning about my background a little bit. Like I'm the kid that loves Star Wars and I, want to be Han Solo. And then I flew and now I'm making this television show. And my show was about 2 Army soldiers, both female, who are injured in the war in Afghanistan. And when they come home, there's no place for society for these women. Because so much of us is based on our appearance. If you come back with missing a leg, or if you come back with some sort of brain injury, as these women do, you're kind of, I don't want to use the term outcast, but you just don't fit anywhere. Right. What are we supposed to do with you? Especially if you're in your 20s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and that's a thing, because we've been fighting a war for 16 years. We have millennials coming home, male and female, with these types of injuries, and I feel like our network is not, ready to handle it.
Not prepared.
They're not prepared at all. So I have these 2 women who come back from the war, and they reinvent themselves in terms of they're going to be private investigators, which seems kind of cheesy, but let's fall back on the fact that they have a certain amount of skills.
Yeah. No, I was thinking all they can do is be motivational speakers.
No.
You gave them a real job.
I gave them a real job, and also gave me an engine for the show, right?
Yeah.
Because every show needs something to keep driving the story forward.
So that's a procedural.
Right.
Smart.
Right. But a procedural with these characters that I feel like we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times procedurals are very like, man from, ex-CIA. Okay, I'm giving you ex-Army, but I'm giving you 2 young women, disabled, but they have skills. One was like an intelligence analyst, so she's really good with like digging for information. One was a combat medic. So together, they form a whole.
Have you signed this with someone? Because I don't want you giving it all away.
Oh, no. If someone else thinks they could write that, but me, I please give it a go.
Okay.
So anyway, that's a project, right? And so you sort of incorporate my background with what that is. So you say, okay, well, she's the one that's right to write that.
Of course.
Right. And also, why now? And then the tone, talk about the tone of it. And you just keep rehearsing and refining this pitch so that in a certain 10-minute sit down, you can sort of give the person, well, at least enough, like, I don't know, I don't give you every beat of the pilot. I don't have time for that. But I give you enough to like, are you interested or not? Because then I can send you the script. Or then we can set up another meeting. And that's the whole goal of it. Sometimes when you're in these lab situations, I don't care if it's Sundance or, Rise on the Verge, they do let you cross-pollinate with a lot of execs or whatever, and you have a limited amount of time.
You just got to get them interested.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're all interested after hearing that.
Oh, hopefully, one day. Netflix was interested too, so I owe them a script. So, yeah.
Good.
We'll see. I don't know if procedural is really their thing, but we'll see.
It seems like everything is their thing.
Okay. Yeah.
They know where the audience is. They have all the data.
They do have a ton of data. That was clear. But then they were also like, yeah, but we just want to do stuff that's, engaging and good. No one wanted to do Narcos. He took it to Netflix. They were like, yeah, that sounds good. So they have a different model that they're operating under.
Well, they can find the audience.
Right.
They know where they are.
Right. So that's what I've been working on. I'm rewriting it based on the notes I got from the lab. So that's my current project. And then there's so many other things I want to do.
Like what?
So again, going back to the directing of it all, because I've been spending so much time the past few years just on the writing, which I feel like is super important, because that's kind of the foundation of everything. You don't want to build your house on a shaky foundation. So I still want to direct more short films. I feel like I need to get more comfortable with what I want to do with the camera, how I want it to move. And then, so I've just been applying to different grants, to get money to make my short films, to see what's out there. This one I won't give away, but there's one period piece that I want to do, which is a tough sell. And I want to do it as a feature, but I know that no one's going to want to read my period piece with a black protagonist, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, I've got to have a proof of concept short to show people, and then maybe that can get them interested in the feature-length script, kind of like what Damien Chazelle did with Whiplash. Whiplash was a short film first.
Oh.
Yeah. And then, because no one wanted to read his script about jazz and the school, like, no, we're not into this. He did it as a short film. He did that one scene where J.K. Simmons comes in and just berates the room or whatever and goes nuts, and you get, okay, this is what this is.
Yeah.
So once he did the short, he was able to generate some interest in the feature-length script, So that's kind of where I'm headed now.
That seems to be working for people now.
Yeah.
That's the calling card.
Yeah, people make the mistake of doing the trailer. I'm going to do a trailer for the feature. And then it just ends up this hodgepodge of scenes that really don't amount to much. Just pick one scene that you feel like is the heart of what you're trying to say with your feature, the heart of what your piece is.
Give us a moment
Shoot that.
That makes us feel something.
Small moment. And Damien Chazelle was pretty smart because he set it in one location. Super cheap. I could tell he did that short very much on a budget. Like one room. And then you probably put out some money to get J.K. Simmons in there. But but that helps too if you can get a name actor in it. But do your proof of concept short, because I'm finding that people don't want to read scripts anymore.
Everyone's attention span is 3 minutes
so small.
Yeah.
So if you can give them a nugget, something and it's less of a commitment. If I'm an exec on a Friday at 3:00, do I want to read a full 120-page script, or do I want to look at this little 12-minute movie and be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah. So that's something else to think about too.
Smart. So you're headed towards writer-director.
Yeah, definitely. But I also TV is where I got my start, and it's always where I would love to move up. The sad thing about a lot of Black writers and women writers in particular is that we end up in the lower level, the staff writer, story editor level, and we're not moving up. And that's something that I don't know what the fix is for that in terms of, what can we do to rewrite the ship, if you will.
Yeah.
But you end up seeing like a lot of, one and done Black writers who were staffed on a show and then they don't work again, or it's been like 5 years since they've worked or whatever.
Right, because you see Shonda, so people are like, see, problem solved.
Right, and
except
that's
that it's only Shonda.
Right, and she has her realm of people that she wants to work with, and she brings from show to show. But yeah, it's just really hard to get into that, to thrive in that mid-level area for a lot of non-white writers, women writers. I mean, I run into women writers all the time at the Guild who are in the Writers Guild but are not repped. So sometimes these opportunities come up like, oh, have your rep send, but you don't have a rep to send your material. And then if you don't have a rep, people are like, well, we don't want to read it for legal reasons, that sort of thing. So it's a really hard situation to be in, yeah. But it is definitely a thing where I see you have the Shondas, who are the showrunners, and like the lady who does Being Mary Jane, Mara Brocker Keel. Those ladies are at that level. And there's not that middle management in terms of minority writers. And then I think there was something that came out. It was all over the social media. 4.8% of writers' rooms have Black writers or something. And everyone's just like, oh my God, it's so awful, so awful, so awful. And I kind of I was like, that doesn't shock me at all.
No.
I mean, and part of it is, I don't know. Smarter people than me have tried to figure it out. All I can do personally is work on my content. Yeah. Keep making more content, keep directing shorts, writing more stuff, applying, submitting, see what happens. Because I certainly didn't expect to get into the film independent lab, and I got in, and they got 500 submissions, and they picked 6. So, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, that's something. Or someone believes in my project. Someone believes in this story about these 2 women coming back from the Afghanistan war with these injuries. And
I wonder if that's the way. Instead of incrementally working your way up on other people's shows, you just have to create your own material and make it compelling enough that you jump to showrunner. Maybe
that's a hard thing to do. And in my case, even if they would want to pair me with someone experienced, sure. Right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't just like, oh, you were staff writer a couple times. Yeah, go ahead and run
which isn't terrible.
No, it isn't
so
terrible.
Trying to figure that out on top of everything else.
As long as you connect with that person they pair you with. I always keep in the back of my mind, like, who would I want, to just have a name ready. So, no, I know someone.
Yeah. Ava.
Yeah. She's busy. She's got like all this stuff
really
happening.
Busy.
Yeah, a lot happening with her. So.
All right, do you have those people ready in your pocket?
Yeah, definitely. It helps that I've worked with some of these people and also through UCLA, because some of those instructors there are now like either co-EPs or showrunners or whatever. So it's like those would be the phone calls I would make. Say, okay, I know you. Let's talk about this or whatever. But we're not there yet. I've just got to work on my content. And then back to that 4.8% number. Black writers in TV rooms, 4.8%.
Is that men and women?
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, well. This isn't new to the agents and the managers. They already know this number.
Of course they do.
So that's why they're reluctant to sign a person of color. You see what I mean? Because they know in the long run, you're not going to make the money.
Right.
This is the vicious cycle we end up. So I'm a Black writer, and like a lot of Black writers, I don't have a rep. And I can't get a rep because the number's 4.8%, and they know they won't make any money. So I continue to have to circulate in my own network to figure out what job I'm going to get or whatever. But that network is small, partly because I'm fairly new to LA, but also because we're not in the same social circles, right? So these showrunners who are golfing or inviting people to their weddings or whatever, is that necessarily going to be me? I don't know. You see what I mean?
But people say it's an even playing field, so what's your problem?
Right. Totally even playing field. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's just...
It's just not.
Yeah. And that's fine. And I'll play the game however it's set up to be played, but don't tell me it's fair when it isn't fair.
Right, but you're going to play the game
you're
going to play to win.
Don't tell me this guy doesn't have a 100-yard start on me in the race. He does.
Right.
And that's fine,
But can we just admit it? And then we can do something about it.
Well, I think that's where we're getting at now, because I feel like there's a shift happening.
You think?
It's a shift happening in terms of all these women who are now coming out and saying, this happened to me, and men too, saying in terms of sexual harassment that are coming out, finally speak their truth after being silent for so long. For me, I mean, going back to the military, another thing people always ask me is like, were you harassed? And there's so much rape and stuff going on. I was like, I didn't have any of that happen to me. That was my experience. I worked with guys who did they say dumb stuff? Did they say sexist stuff at times? And then I just had to spot correct them and sort of set things right. Are they still going to be, some of them sort of set in their ways because they watch Fox News all day and that's their mindset? Fine, but no one ever tried to harass me, grab me, come in my room. I never had that.
Good.
So I sort of make that clear because sometimes I feel like the military gets painted with this broad brush of, oh my God, all the men are just predators and the women.
Well, we all remember Tailhook.
Right.
But you never hear the story 10 years later of all the changes they made
right.
to make changes.
Right.
Which I assume they have because the people I talk to one-on-one are like, the stories I hear now about the military is it being so respectful and ahead of a lot lot with equality.
Yeah, it had to be ahead, right? Because we got a job to do.
Right. There's no time.
And the other thing is, if you didn't have women in the military, you really couldn't function right now. There's certain occupations where they're predominantly women, and it's like we can't. We need them.
They even seem ahead of the game in transgender.
Yeah, until someone came along and said we're gonna now ban transgender from the military, but we won't
with no information.
We won't get into that. The other thing that we were ahead on in terms of like reporting of it. That's been in my head since day one. I stepped foot at the Air Force Academy. Something happens, you report it. Here's who you talk to. Every squadron had an HR. We always had a human relations officer in every squadron.
Really?
Always. Yeah.
So they're serious about
So there's a process,
out.
and we have annual. I mean, some of the guys always like scoff, like, "Why do we have to do this again?" It's like, but someone out there is being attacked. Someone out there is being harassed. So we do this, like, if not annually, then every 6 months. We do sexual harassment training. We do suicide awareness training. We do a lot because it is a problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes we default to the training side of it, and it becomes by rote. That's where it becomes a problem instead of having a discussion.
Yeah. Well, that's all very encouraging.
Yeah.
That's good to
hear. And the numbers are getting better. I mean, I think the Air Force, not to toot my services on horn, but is the most progressive. We have about 18% women in terms of the service. The others are a little bit behind us, and that's fine. It is what it is. But
from where it was 30 years ago.
Right, exactly. Or what it was in World War II. I mean, it's just like we're making incremental steps, but I do feel like there's a shift happening in terms of the culture here in Hollywood where people are like, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yep.
And I feel like we're there, and I'm like, oh, how fortunate I am to be here when this is happening. I see your little Buddha statue over here, and I'm like, yeah, always embrace the positive and be grateful for something instead of always being, mad that this happened and that happened. And it's easy to do that with social media, right? It's easy to get on. I can get on Twitter and be pissed in about 15 seconds.
Oh yeah, I can ruin your day.
Yeah, but again, I've been like meditating, and I have this Buddhist temple I go to over in Los Feliz, which has been really helpful in terms of, especially with this business, dealing with the roller coaster of it all. Because you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. You gotta
get really grounded.
Yeah.
You really have to have peace in your soul to go through this craziness.
Yeah, peace of mind is key. And you don't let other people rob you of your peace of mind, too.
Yeah.
I try and hang on to my peace of mind as much as I can. So, yeah, it's really important to be like, let me be grateful for the things I do have. I have running water that comes out of a tap whenever I want it. There are people in this world that don't have that.
Yeah.
And not to get all like new agey and weird, but it's like sometimes we get so caught up in, oh my God, what did they do today? And you get on social media, and it's like, okay, well, let's rephrase that. One, what can I do today?
Yeah.
And what can I be grateful for?
If you really get to presence and being in this moment right now, nothing's happening to us.
Yes.
We're sheltered.
Yes.
There's a Buddha. We have running water. Like right here, right now, we're fine.
And also the impermanence of it all, right? That's another thing we talk about in Buddhism, where things that begin will end.
Mm-hmm. Good and bad.
Your life and administration. We had John Lewis come to UCLA, one of the perks of being an institution of that caliber. John Lewis, representative from Congress, civil rights activist from way back when. So, and whatever political leanings you have, you listen to this podcast. And I've lived all over the country, and I get why the red states think the way they do. I get why the blue states think the way they do, to the point where I'm sort of this purple amorphous blob where I'm just sort of in between, like, okay, not sure where to be.
Yeah.
But John Lewis comes, and he one of the questions he was asked in his talk was, this administration and Trump and the things they're doing, how do you even take it? And how do you get out of bed in the morning? And how are you handling it? And even the moderator asked the question, and he had sort of this, this tension, and his shoulders were scrunched up, and it's like this anger in his body. And John Lewis, just casual as can be, he's leaning back, and he's like, listen, this too shall pass. Yeah. And I was like, this is why you got to listen to your elders, right?
Stop. It all.
Exactly. The man, like, he took the fire hose to the face. He was, He
was at Selma, wasn't
he? Yes.
Yeah. He has seen it.
He's been jailed and he's been beaten. And it's like, he's like, this too shall pass. And I was like, he's spot on.
Did everyone just exhale?
Yeah. Oh, at least I did. I was like, yeah, he's right. Maybe some of the millennials were like, still frenetic or whatever, but I took it as like, he's so right. It can't last forever.
Yeah. Let this rage fuel you to make some change.
Impermanence, and this begins and this will end, and then we'll have something else. It's like, I think we're there in Hollywood right now. It's like we've had this certain culture that began and went on for a while, and then it's going to meet its end. And then we've had this, situation where female directors aren't getting as much work as the male directors, and it's like, this, and I'm so encouraged when I see things like Mudbound by Dee Reese is coming out, and I'm like, again, this too will end.
And Lady Bird, I just saw.
I haven't
Delicious.
seen it yet.
It's great.
Okay.
What do you think the next steps are for women?
In terms of Hollywood or just in general?
Oh, or in general.
Well, here's the in general one. I don't know if people know this. This will sound weird, but I think killer whales, pretty sure it's killer whales, or maybe it's the blue whale, but whales tend to be matriarchal. Mm-hmm. The way they travel, the way they go about their business, it's like the women are leading it, guiding it, making all the decisions, and the men come in for the procreation, and they're kept kind of on the outside. And I'm like, well, whales are our closest counterpart in terms of intelligence and how long they've been on this planet and evolution. I was like, we could be headed in that direction, which makes a lot of men terrified. Sorry, you've had your time. You've had thousands of years to do your thing, get it right.
And look what has happened.
And look where we are. We're in this place of like anger, racism, hate crimes off the charts.
War.
Charlottesville. Yeah, and it's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So that might be where we're headed. And I'm also encouraged. I saw this lovely short documentary called Fear Us Women.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Did you go to Women in Entertainment?
No, I did not. I saw it somewhere else.
Oh, she spoke.
So Hannah Bowman, who is the focus of the documentary, a Canadian woman who at 46 decides she is going to volunteer to be in the all-women's military in Syria fighting ISIS. It's called the YPJ. She's the real deal.
She's incredible.
I met her all day. I was like, you're a real life Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
The things she's doing. And what was sad, I encourage everyone to go out and see this short documentary. It's only 30 minutes. It's called, you can go to fearuswomen.com to see it. And then
can you see it online?
Yes, it is online. It's also on the Go 90 network, but I think it's easier just go fearuswomen.com. Mm-hmm. 30 minutes of your time. It's one of the best things I've seen all year. And what's sad is some of the women you're going to see in the piece are no longer with us. Yeah. And I'm seeing these young girls in their 20s who are fighting ISIS because ISIS is enslaving women, using them as sex slaves, taking over communities. And they're like, no.
They are not having it.
We're not having it. And what's sad is some of the women you'll see in the movie are no longer with us.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart because I see these girls, they've got the heart of a soldier, but they're not equipped. I'm like, some of them don't have combat boots. I'm like,
and they got old weapons.
Yeah, old equipment.
And
I was like, I got old combat boots under my bed I could send over there. Like, oh my, what can I do? But it goes back to the core of it of women fighting for women. Mm-hmm. So you asked me in general, where are we headed? I think that's an army of 10,000s, or that's what the documentary said. I think that's where we're headed, where we finally say, enough is enough. Here's my AK-47. Here's whatever I need. I mean, we're gonna do this.
Just to be clear, we're not taking to the streets with AK-47s. I think how I would interpret what you're saying is women are not going to wait any longer to be bestowed power by men.
Right.
We are going to take our rightful place.
Or, if you have a story about a showrunner who has been harassing you for years, and like the women did on One Tree Hill, they came out and said, this is our story, and you're going to listen, damn it.
Yeah.
That's your AK-47.
Right.
Okay, to make that
your voice.
Sort of, yeah. And you're not taking no for an answer. Like, no, you're going to listen.
Yeah. I think we're all collectively going to respond differently the next time we're sexually harassed. I know I will.
Yeah.
It's going to be a different response.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I get when I'm walking down the street. I get the smile. And the next time someone does it, I'm like, you don't tell me what to do.
I've talked to a lot of men about this, and they're bewildered why it upsets us so much.
Stupid.
Can you explain it?
Well, for me, it's, first of all, I don't exist for your comfort. The other thing is, do not tell me what to do in my daily life. And first of all, I'm entitled to have a bad day. I'm entitled to not give you any attention. I'm not entitled to smile at you and be pleasant all the time. Mm-hmm. Again, but it's this idea of we exist to support them, or we exist for their benefit. My life is mine.
That's it. My life is mine. That's the tweet.
Yeah.
My life is mine.
Well, I got to give all credit to Tracy Ross.
Yes.
She put that. Did you see that video she did? Glamour magazine.
No.
Okay. Look for the Tracy Ross Glamour magazine talk that she did. It's incredible. She's 45 and she gets approached all the time about when are you going to have kids? Yeah. When are you going to get married? And she finally, at the end of her talk, she's like, no, my life is mine. Mm-hmm. That's all you got to tell people. Because for a reason, husband plus child equals woman. That's the equation that some people are working under.
Yeah.
It's not okay. Your life is whatever it is you want it to be, whether it includes a husband and child or it doesn't. Great. We have options. Yeah,
it doesn't make you less of a woman if you don't have those things.
So sometimes people do that with me all the time. I just had it happen last weekend. Someone's asked me, the husband and the kids, and when are you you think about, and I was just like, no, I'm not interested in those things. I mean, that's just me.
For years, I had this theory that women want to, we're so conditioned that we have to get married and start the family, and then maybe we start our lives.
And then maybe you do the thing you really want to do.
And men do the thing they want to do.
But then you're on the Xanax. We talked about this before we started. By then, you're like in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're hitting the Xanax because it's like, well, I don't even know who I am anymore other than I'm the wife, I'm the mother, and I don't have anything that's really my own.
And I think men establish their life before they
For sure, because they are taught from a young age, this is what you do. Whereas I feel like sometimes women, luckily it didn't happen with me. I was just like, me and my sister, neither one of us are married with kids. So both my parents are just like, I don't know what went on. But what's sad is in terms of Tracy Ross and her talk, she's accomplished so much.
Yeah.
But yet it's like, oh, well, you don't have this, so people are diminishing her. You don't have the husband, you don't have the kids, you're diminishing this. I'm an Air Force pilot turned TV writer. Because I don't have a husband and kids, somehow it's like, oh, well, you're less than. No, I'm more than. Yeah. So let's stop the madness. Yeah. And that's where, I think that's where we're headed in Hollywood, too. Let's stop the madness. Yeah.
Are you a success?
I don't think of myself as a success. I'm a work in progress, like anybody. I had someone tell me another quote years ago, and it always stuck in my head. I think it comes from some sort of heavy metal type music that I'm not familiar with, but he said, satisfaction is the death of desire. I was like, that's interesting. Because once you're satisfied and you're happy and like, oh, I'm successful, and then it's like, then are you done? Is there nothing more for you to do? And I feel like there's stuff for me to do until the day I leave this earth.
Do we have to reach the pinnacle of every dream has come true before being able to say, I'm a success?
No, and you will have successes in other things, like my cat has lived to the age of 13. Well, that's a success.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, and she's got many years to go. She's 13, but she looks like she's 3. Let me just tell you. I think sometimes we look at the big things instead of looking at the smaller. Like, it's a success. Hey, I got my pages done today. I had a goal today. It's a success. It's a success. I got my ass to Pilates today. I didn't want to be here, but I'm here. That's a success. Like, not to be all Buddhist again, but that goes back to those being grateful for sometimes for the smaller things that we're sort of missing. And it's like, I'm a success because, you know what, I got through the day and I was nice to everyone I met.
Victory.
Even if they weren't nice to me, I gave kindness to the people I came across, even if they didn't return it. That's a success.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get caught up in the success of like the money and the job and the things, and maybe I have a hot partner or whatever. That's going to lead to some lack of fulfillment, I think. That's going to lead to like a heart that is troubled. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to find it internally, not externally. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Totally does.
Okay.
Are you a badass?
No.
What?
People tell me that. Like, people say it all the time. Like, you know, it was Hannah that we just talked about. She's a badass.
She's a super badass.
And I met her, and she was like, and she said to me, she's like, would you be interested in going over there, joining the YPJ? And I had to, like, really think about it. I was like, you know what? I kind of would be, but I have too many responsibilities and too many commitments, and but I'm like, these women are really doing the fight.
Core. Oh, it would never occur to me to go over and do that. Oh my God.
Yeah, but it was just like one woman, you know, we just made eye contact. She said to me, and I was like, and I had to be honest with her, I was like, while I was watching the film, I was like, would I go over there? Because haven't had a lot of Westerners go over there and join YPJ, to all women units to fight ISIS. She's one of 3 Westerners that's gone over there. At the time when she went, I think there have been more since.
That's incredible.
And
There'll be more after
She's
this
a
film.
badass, and I just hope everyone...
Okay, so what does that mean to you? Like, if she's the badass...
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty high bar.
Yeah, right. I mean, but we're all badasses in different areas, right? You could be the best organizer, and you're a badass at that. Like, badass doesn't always have to be, I'm a soldier on the front lines badass, or I'm flying an airplane badass. You could be a badass at your yoga studio, you know? Or you could be a badass mentally, like I just talked about, in terms of, like, going into Trader Joe's, and I'm going to have compassion for everyone I come across and let them have their way and their space, even though people start elbowing and getting crazy. I go to the one in Silver Lake. It gets nuts over there.
Yep.
And it's like all these higher end, I'm going to say it, higher end white people are acting like they have no tolerance for anyone else in the world. It's like, I have to always recage my thinking every time I go in there.
You're just at the Trader Joe's. Let's calm down.
Yeah, but they can't, because it's like the things. I got to get my things. And have compassion for those people. If that's what you need today, you need your sweet potato chips and your organic popcorn or whatever it is you're buying in there. That's what I go in there for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if that's what you need, have that. You can have your way. I have compassion for you. It's
okay,
hard.
So are you a badass?
I don't think so at all. I really
You're never going to own that.
I really don't. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. I'm a badass cat servant. I'm pretty good with making sure that the food is in that bowl and like the litter box is clean. I'm pretty badass at that. But I mean, in terms of like flying an airplane, I guess no. I'm not aware that anyone ever shot at me. You know, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if that's so badass. I guess it's badass to learn that stuff, but I want to get to the point where we don't look at women as being badasses because you learn the same thing a man does.
Okay, well, compared to me, who was tap dancing in my 20s, I
Tap
look
dance
at
is
you
great.
and think you're flying.
But see, I don't
airplanes.
tap
That's
dance.
Badass.
See, I look at people who dance and can do these things. I'm like, that's freaking cool, you know, or paint. Because
so
I mean, the grass is always greener, right? So there I was this, you know, in my 20s, and I'm like hanging out in combat zones or whatever, and I'm not thinking I'm a badass. I'm thinking, I wish I had time to freaking paint a flower. I don't have time for that. I would deploy, and I'd bring like my little painting kit or my calligraphy kit or whatever, because I just felt like I need to use this other side of my brain.
Yeah, you need a creative outlet.
And I don't have it here. Sometimes we would watch movies and stuff. I mean, they were really good about having entertainment available when we were deployed or whatnot. It helps morale, right? But I mean, there are times when I just want to be alone because I'm an introvert naturally, and I need to recharge my battery. And so be alone and like paint a flower or paint something, or maybe draw something or write something. That's when I started writing too. I'd write like little short stories about the guys in my squadron who were pissing me off that day. This guy Rich is such a jerk, you know, and just write something about him just to get it out there, or write a journal, whatever. So the grass is always greener, you know.
Well, it takes all different kinds of people to make this world happen.
It does. I mean, how boring would it be if we were all the same? But I think everyone is a badass in a certain area. I mean, you could be a badass in terms of like your kids.
I'm a badass mother.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't people say that?
I don't know. Because we're supposed to be perfect, and if we're not perfect, then...
No. You're a badass mom who isn't helicoptering her kids, or, you know, hovering around them all the time.
I'm the anti-helicopter.
Yeah, that's a badass mom to me.
Yeah, good. Go team.
So,
is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
I really can't think of anything.
thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for doing the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Lynelle White for sharing her story, and special thanks to Kate McDougald for the editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or Podbay, and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, pictures, and the merchandise. In fact, please go there right now and subscribe. We're also now on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Other50% and Instagram at Other50% Podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.